What's up, guys? We're back with NCAA Final Four action here on Saturday, April 6th. The Friday games haven't all finished, but we are off to a flying start. We nailed the Pacers and the over-under in that game, Portland and the over-under in that game. Orlando was a dumpster fire. How does Charlotte even win that game? How does Orlando lose that game? Absolutely craziness in that one. We didn't end up right on the Boston minus 8.5. That was a very, very small lean for us, and we were right on the over-under in that game. The Bulls, we nailed that one. Chicago minus 1.5, the over-under in that game. The Spurs plus 10.5 and the under in that game. Those are two of our biggest plays of the day. We got both of those right. The Spurs actually won that game straight up, so that one felt really, really good. We also were on the right side of Miami plus 1.5, but the wrong side of that over-under. We still got the Warriors and the Timberwolves games going on. We'll see how those end up, but regardless, we've got a big winning day in the books. Hopefully you guys are riding with us in that one. We have two big Final Four games to break down and a nice little NBA slate to check out, so let's get after it. I appreciate everyone hitting that like button and showing your support for all the work we're doing here every single day. If you're new, take a second and subscribe to the channel. It's 100% free and can keep you from missing out on these picks. Over 70% of our viewers aren't subscribed. I know we can do a lot better than that. These videos are sponsored by StumpTheSpread.com. Click the link in the description and go over there and join our free email list and check out our top confidence plays on all the major sports, brought to you by our whole team of experts. Comment below with all the bets you're looking at today. We'll give you the best advice we have on those picks. We respond to every single comment, so let us know anything you want to say about my picks, these videos, or anything you see here. As always, our final picks will be pinned in the comment below. Now let's get into our first game of the day. We've got NC State going up against Purdue in the Final Four. NC State, as an 11 seed, is certainly the Cinderella story of the NCAA tournament. They come into this game fresh off of a blowout win over the Duke Blue Devils. They won that game 76-64. It wasn't that close. This team has been playing fantastic ball, led by DJ Burns, or at least it feels like he's the leader of this team. In general, NC State has had a really tough road to get here. They played against a very solid Texas Tech team in the first round in that 11 versus 6 matchup, and they blew them out 80-67, a solid 13-point win in that one. In the second round of the tournament, they drew Oakland, who looked like a pretty weak team in the opening round, we would have thought, but they went absolutely nuts, winning their opening round game, one of the bigger upsets of the tournament. But NC State didn't have too much trouble with them. They won 79-73 before going on to take on Marquette. In the second weekend of the tournament, in the Sweet 16, we saw them knock off Marquette 67-58. Marquette did really not have any answers for the NC State game plan, and we saw DJ Burns have a big game in that one. And then against the Duke Blue Devils, he absolutely outplayed Kyle Filipowski. Filipowski fell out of that game. Duke went down 76-64, and that's how we see the Wolfpack here in the Final Four. This team has been on a magical run. They just rampaged through the ACC tournament to even get themselves into the NCAA tournament at all. They got that win against Duke despite only making 3 of 13 3-pointers in that game. They got out-rebounded by 2. They just managed to find a way to win. We saw DJ Burns get 29 points in that game. He only had 4 rebounds. We saw O'Connell actually lead the way in rebounding with 11. This team managed to get to the line 23 times. There were quite a few free throws in that game overall. So I guess it's not a huge accomplishment, but something that is the fact they only turned the ball over 5 times in that entire game. This team takes care of the ball. They play really well. They don't shoot that well from deep, which could be a problem going up against the Purdue Boilermakers, who are a team with one of the best, actually definitely the best big man in the nation in Zach Edey. The Boilermakers navigated their way here to the Final Four, making almost every single game look pretty easy. The opening round game against Grambling, they dominated. We saw Edey put up massive numbers against Utah State, a team that some thought, including me, could give them something of a game. They dominated once again. They did not get anywhere close to a close game in that one. They won 106-67. Then they absolutely dismantled Gonzaga by 12 points. Not exactly a blowout in that one, but it really wasn't all that close. The Zags had absolutely no answer for Edey in there. And then going against Tennessee, that game looked like it might be tough for a while before Purdue pulled away at the end, winning that one by 6 points, 72-66. In that game, we saw Edey go absolutely crazy. He scored 40 points in that game. He did shoot 22 free throws, and he only made 14 of them, so that's a little bit of a concern if he's not knocking down his free throw attempts, but man, he scored 40 points and had 16 boards in that game. Tennessee just had absolutely no answer. The question in this game is going to be whether or not NC State can come up with any sort of remedy. We saw Purdue not shoot the ball very well from deep in that game. They did only make 21 of their 33 free throw attempts, but they absolutely dominated on the boards. They out-rebounded Tennessee 47-26. Like, those are crazy, crazy numbers. That is not something you see every day in any sport. That kind of domination is kind of historical, it feels like to me. We did see Purdue's bench score exactly 0 points in that game, so that's something of a concern. NC State's bench scored 10 points against Duke, so we can expect a little bit better from their bench than we expect from Purdue's bench, but I would definitely hope that they'll score more than 0 points in this game. Right now, the spread looks like Purdue minus 9.5. In the trends for this game, obviously trends don't mean too much in the NCAA tournament, but we're going to look at them nevertheless. We see NC State, they're 20, 19, and 1 against the spread, but guys, they have been killing it for so long. This team hasn't lost a game since before the conference tournament started, so they've probably pretty much forgotten what it feels like to even come out on the short end of a game. We see Purdue, they are 20 and 15 and 2 against the spread over the course of the season. 9.5 points feels like kind of a lot to me in this game. Give me NC State as a small lean. This isn't going to be my bigger bet. My bigger bet's going to be on the other Final Four game, but I definitely think that NC State can find a way to keep things close in this one. If you're a believer out there and you think they've got a chance to win this game straight up, I wouldn't shy too far away from putting a little bit on the money line here. Who knows? This team is on an absolutely magical run. Maybe it's just destiny in this one. We could see Edey getting in foul trouble, and that could mess things up for Purdue very fast. If he has an off night or rolls an ankle or just gets in foul trouble, things are going to go downhill for them very fast. In our other Final Four game, we've got the Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the Yukon Huskies. Alabama was a little bit of a dark horse team to make it here to the Final Four, but they were a 4 seed, so it's not actually crazy for them to have made it this distance. In their opening round game, we saw Alabama come out and get a crazy high-scoring win. They won 109-96 over a high-flying Charleston team. They then took down Grand Canyon. That was a very solid win against a very athletic and surprisingly good Grand Canyon squad. Then they got probably their most shocking win of the tournament so far when they took down top seed UNC 89-87. That was an absolutely crazy game. We saw 4 Crimson Tide starters score in double figures. They actually all scored 18 points or more. We saw Nelson go off for 24 points. That was an absolutely crazy game from him. He got to the line. He was knocking down his shots. He was making crazy 3-pointers. He was driving into the paint, showing off the bag. He was looking amazing. We also saw Sears play well in that game, and as a squad, the Crimson Tide shot the ball extremely well from deep. That's pretty much been their calling card in this tournament. In their Elite 8 win over Clemson, we once again saw Alabama shoot the ball really well from long range. They made 16 threes in that game. They actually out-rebounded Clemson 44-33. That's pretty crazy. Not something you expect to see from this team. They did have a concerning amount of turnovers in that one, though. They turned the ball over 13 times. That's something that's not really going to fly here in the Final Four playing against ultra-elite competition in the Yukon Huskies. Yukon has been one of the most dominant teams we've seen in an NCAA tournament in quite some time. The Huskies absolutely blew out their opening round opponent. That's to be expected, but then they went on this crazy run, shutting down Northwestern and Boo Buie 75-58. That game was never in doubt, never even close. Buie probably wanted to quit basketball after that game. Then they blew out San Diego State 82-52, winning by 30 points. My God, they absolutely destroyed Ledee in that game. He couldn't get anything going. And then they took down number 3 Illinois, a team that really a lot of people thought could keep it close. They won that game by 25 points. Terrence Shannon Jr. has been one of the best players in the entire NCAA all season long. He's an amazing scorer. He's destined for the NBA. He went 2 of 12 from the field against Yukon, scoring 8 total points. Absolute nightmare game from him. Could not get anything going. This team plays absolutely suffocating defense. They knock down enough shots. They're primarily an interior team. That doesn't matter for them. They've been clearing the bench in every single game in this NCAA tournament. They just look completely unstoppable right now. They were unstoppable all regular season except for a couple random hiccup games. This team seems like they are destined to win another title. They just look completely dominant. The odds makers also think they're a dominant team. We see UConn is minus 11.5 in this game. Alabama is a solid team against the spread this season. When we're looking at the trends, they are 21-15 against the spread overall, but UConn is a startling 26-12 against the spread over the course of this season. This is a chalky pick, guys. I'm not going to lie, but they came through for us last round, and they have been money all tournament long. Give me UConn minus 11.5 in this one. I'm going to be on this in a significant way. I do not think we see Alabama be able to score the ball like they want to against this team, and there will be no problem for UConn putting up as many points as they want to against a defensively challenged Crimson Tide squad that while they've been able to play well on the boards, they've competed on the glass against some teams. That will not be the case going up against the Huskies. Now let's go ahead and hop into that NBA slate. It's not a big slate, it's 4 games, but there's some decent ones out there. The first one, it's an afternoon showdown between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Los Angeles Lakers. Cleveland comes into this one fresh off of a tough blowout loss. They lost by 21 points in Phoenix. That was not a good game at all. We saw Donovan Mitchell actually play in that game. It did not help at all. Things just did not work out for them. Stuff is going to get really, really weird here in Cleveland if they don't make some sort of playoff run. We'll see Donovan Mitchell probably just jump ship and head on out of there. There's no real reason for him to be excited about the prospect of staying with his team if they cannot do something meaningful here in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Evan Mobley scored 20 points in that game, and his stats look decent, but he posted a -4 plus-minus, and we just saw the Cleveland bench get absolutely destroyed in this game. Karis LeVert looked completely lost out there. It was an absolutely terrible game from him. I don't know if he was betting on the other team or what was going on, but he looked lost. He had 5 turnovers in the game. He only scored 11 points. He was just not doing anything good out there and just looked like a shell of himself. I don't know what the deal was in that game. Had to be something going on though. Just in general, we saw the Cavaliers bench. They only had 13 points come off the bench. They only shot 7 of 26 from 3-point range in that game. They got out rebounded by the Phoenix Suns, which isn't something that should be happening a ton. They had absolutely no answers for Booker and KD. They combined for 72 points on some pretty efficient shooting. The Suns shot 54.5% from long range in that game. They made 18 of 33 threes. Just not a competitive game at all from Cleveland. They need to be playing better than that right now. They find themselves sitting in the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. They don't want to, they're only 1 game up on the Magic and the Knicks for the 4 and 5 seeds. Cleveland does not want to fall out of having a home court advantage here in the first round, and they need to find some better form than what they've been showing lately because things are not looking good. Taking a peek at the injury report right now, it looks like Cleveland is healthy for this game, but that didn't make any difference for them against the Suns. The question in this one is, will that make a difference for them going up against the Los Angeles Lakers? The Lakers come into this game, they've won 3 straight. Their last one was a close one playing at the Washington Wizards, so not exactly a great showing. Looking at their injury report, which is always important for the Lakers, they've always got LeBron and AD listed as questionable. In this game, there's nothing new. We see LeBron's questionable with that ankle, and we see that AD is questionable with his ongoing knee thing. We do expect both of them to play in this game, but it's worth a minute to monitor their status coming up to game time, as you never know, they could have a random just sit out this game situation. Although the Lakers really shouldn't be trying to do that too often right now, as they sit in the 9 seed in the Western Conference, only a game and a half back of the Phoenix Suns, with a real chance to get themselves out of this play-in tournament. We've seen the Warriors and the Lakers come on strong here at the end of the season. The Warriors did just lose to the Dallas Mavericks in a tough back-to-back game with a lot of their guys sitting out, so maybe the Warriors aren't running too hot anymore, but the Lakers are winning and the Kings and Pelicans are losing, so there's a real chance that we could see LeBron and company get out of the play-in tournament if they can continue their winning ways. In that game against the Wizards, we saw LeBron and AD both play great. Up and down the roster, the Lakers' entire starting 5 played amazing, but their bench came up extremely small, totaling only 12 points overall. We saw Taurean Prince, Hayes, and Dinwiddie and Gabe Vincent all getting significant minutes, and none of them were really playing very well. That's a big concern for this team heading into the playoffs, and when you're playing close games against the Washington Wizards, you know something is going wrong. Looking at the spread in this game, we see the Lakers are -5.5. That seems like kind of a tough ask from me. Cleveland is 18-20-1 against the spread playing on the road, so nothing too special. The Lakers are 18-20 against the spread playing at home. This is a tough one, guys. I tend to lean a little bit towards the Cavaliers in this game. The Lakers are really nothing special playing at home. I know they've been playing better recently. Earlier this season, and by early I mean back in November, we did see these two teams play a pretty close game. I don't think that's much of an indication in this one. I really just think that the Cavs have kind of the pieces to slow down LeBron and AD, and if those two don't have big nights, the Lakers have a very tough time, and Cleveland is definitely due for a bounce back performance after that terrible game their last time out. Looking at the over-under in this one, we see it's at 225.5. The Cavaliers are 23-16 to the under when playing on the road, and we see the Lakers are basically a 50-50 team when they're playing at home, so give me a small taste of that under, but our main lean in this game is going to be the Cavaliers plus 5.5. Next up, we're looking at the Detroit Pistons going on the road to take on the Brooklyn Nets. Detroit comes into this game, they're on a losing streak. They're riding a 3-game losing streak. They just lost last night playing at Memphis, and now they've got to play at Brooklyn, so that's a little bit of tough travel. The important thing for the Pistons right now is going to be the development of their young players, as they're clearly going nowhere this season. In this game, we're looking at the injury report. We see that Cade Cunningham did sit out that game against Memphis. The question is, will he come back for this game? His absence was technically due to knee injury related rest effectively, so sitting out the first half of a back-to-back seems pretty standard, and I do kind of expect him to play in this next game. I do think there's a very reasonable chance though that we see Jalen Duren sit out in this one, so so we're going to need to come up with a lot of information from Detroit before we're comfortable betting them in this game, because we just don't know who they're going to have on the floor. In that game at Memphis, we saw the Pistons lose by 18 points, not exactly an elite showing. Duren was good in limited minutes in that game. We saw Ivy go off for 31 points, so that's a little bit encouraging, and some of their bench players were able to score the ball, but when you're only totaling 90 points against a pretty bad team like the Grizzlies, you're only shooting 8 of 30 from long range in this game. You're losing the rebound battle by 11. Those are all pretty decisive numbers there. Things are looking a little bit tough right now for the Pistons, which will be no surprise to anyone and definitely no surprise to their fan base. The Nets come into this game fresh off of a surprising, very solid win over the Indiana Pacers. The Nets have actually kind of quietly won 4 out of their last 6 overall. They are officially eliminated from the playoffs, so we're not going to see them in the play-in tournament or making any sort of crazy run, and that's not too surprising, but that's pretty dark news for this franchise in general, as they don't really have anything to be tanking for right now. They don't own many of their draft picks, and the future is not looking super bright unless they're able to make some sort of move. But if they make some sort of big trade, then they're going to be getting rid of a lot of their young players, their interesting young talent, and that is not a good recipe for success down the road. In the win over the Pacers, we saw all their starters score in double figures. We saw Cam Thomas continue to ball out. He put up 27 points, although it wasn't the most efficient 27 points. He was only 3 of 11 from 3 and 9 of 21 from long range, so not exactly elite, but we did see Clowney put up 22 points coming off the bench. That's very encouraging. As a team, they shot nearly 40% from the three-point line. That's also nice. We saw Mikal Bridges have a decent, for his current status, kind of game. He's been having a really tough season. His stock has fallen off a cliff this year, which is pretty disappointing, but it's got to be hard to keep that motivation up when you're playing for such a bad team. So I don't know, maybe he gets a little bit of pass for this one. I think everybody's just a little bit too far off of him at this point right now. Hearing a lot of tough stuff about him in like podcasts and different things. So hopefully he can have a bounce back year next season, because there's nothing really all that great coming down the pike for the Brooklyn Nets this year. Looking at the spread in this game, we see the Nets are minus 7.5 going up against a banged up Pistons team. That makes sense to me. We'll have to see who is actually playing for Detroit before we make a final prediction on this game, but right now I'm definitely leaning towards the Nets minus 7.5. Detroit is 20-17 against the spread playing on the road this season, but they're only 6-7 against the spread on no rest, and they're very unlikely to have their full complement of players out there. We see that Brooklyn is 20-15-3 against the spread playing at home. That's a pretty solid number. I'm definitely leaning towards the Nets in this game, unless we see both Cade and Jalen Duren playing in this one. That could maybe change my mind, but I don't really expect that to happen. Looking at the over-under for this one, we see it's at 215.5, not a very big number. We see that Detroit is 21-16 to the over when they're playing on the road, and 7-6 to the over on no rest. And we see that Brooklyn is basically a 50-50 over-under team, so I guess give me a slight lean towards the over if we see a lot of health on both sides, but if there's very little health, or we see Detroit hold out both Duren and Cade and maybe some other players, then we could definitely lean towards the under. Next up, we got the Philadelphia 76ers going on the road to take on the Memphis Grizzlies. Philadelphia has to be feeling great right now. They've won 3 in a row. They've seen Embiid come back and playing well. The 76ers did just get fined for violating injury reporting rules, which makes a lot of sense to me because, man, there was not a lot of warning when Embiid came back from that injury, was there, guys? The big injury question facing this team right now is when will we see Tyrese Maxey back out there on the floor? We also see that Tobias Harris is listed as day-to-day and Joel Embiid is on the injury report, but I don't think there's any reason we would expect to see Embiid sit this one out. Maxey is technically questionable for this game due to left hip tightness. I doubt kind of that we'll see him come back for this game. I mean, why are you going to rush him back for a game against the Grizzlies? But the 76ers need to be winning every game they can right now. They currently sit in the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're only 1.5 games back of the Pacers for that 6th seed and the rights to avoid the play-in tournament. Tobias Harris is questionable with his knee injury. No real lean on whether or not he's going to play in this game. It's Tobias Harris, so he could be a factor, or more likely he'll be basically a non-factor out there in this game. Joel Embiid is questionable against the Grizzlies with a left knee injury recovery type deal, obviously like we would expect him to be, but I think it's pretty likely that he'll play in this one. And with how good he's looked coming back from injury, we expect him to play well. The 76ers are looking good right now, albeit they're not playing against the best opponents. I guess the Heat were close to full strength, but taking down the Thunder at less than full strength and the Heat at less than full strength, not exactly something we're going to write home about, but it's good to see Embiid playing well right out of the gate, and he's going to need to continue to play at least kind of well going up against the Memphis Grizzlies, who come into this game riding a 3-game winning streak, 2 wins over the Pistons and a win over the less than full strength Milwaukee Bucks. Don't exactly get me super excited for this team, but it's nice to see them finding some success without Ja Morant and playing a whole bunch of just no-name guys with most of their big names injured. Looking at their injury report for this one, it's kind of a nightmare. We see Desmond Bane, Vince Williams Jr., and Jaren Jackson Jr. all out. We see Conchar and Luke Kennard all listed as out. It'll be interesting to see what of these players actually play for this game. It's very clear that the Grizzlies are just tanking things out here at the end of the season. I guess nobody in the league offices really care that this is going on. We're going to have to wait until closer to game time to see if they're playing any of these guys. Right now we see Memphis is plus 12, so the odds makers kind of think that they're sitting out, but guys, I can't even give a great pick on this game until we get more clarity on the Grizzlies injury report. My guess would be that most of these guys aren't going to play, but 12 points still seems like a ton for a 76ers team who also has a very, very muddled injury report. We really don't know who's going to be out there for them in this one. If we see Maxey and Embiid both playing this game, I think they could cover 12 points, but we really don't know if that's going to happen. And if we see most of the Grizzlies play in this game, all of a sudden the plus 12 looks really appealing. Although Memphis is only 14-22 against the spread at home this season, Philly is 22-17 against the spread on the road, but I don't think they've been covering a lot of 12-point spreads this season. Looking at the over-under in this game, it's a very low number, which seems to indicate a lot of people aren't going to be playing in this game. We see the 76ers are 21-18 to the over, and we see that Memphis is 23-12-1 to the under at home, and 9-2-1 to the under when playing on no rest. So maybe give me a taste of the under in this game, but just in general, it's going to be one I am leaning towards staying away from, given there's very little injury information. But you can always check that pinned comment down below. If we end up being on this game in some sort of meaningful way, we'll definitely let you guys know in that pinned comment. It'll be there with our final picks if we end up on this game. Last but not least, we got the Atlanta Hawks going on the road to take on the Denver Nuggets. Atlanta comes into this game fresh off of a tough loss to the Dallas Mavericks. They lost that one 109-95. Looking at the injury report right now for the Hawks, we see it's a pretty clean injury report. Not a lot of guys banged up on that roster right now. Everybody seems like they're going to be ready to go for this one, and they need to be playing well. Coming down the stretch here, they're only one game back of the Chicago Bulls in the race to see who's going to have home court advantage in that 9-10 matchup in the play-in tournament. Atlanta has been playing somewhat better here down the stretch. They've actually won 6 out of the last 8 games overall, which is very, very solid, especially when 2 of those wins came over the Boston Celtics and 1 of those wins came over the Chicago Bulls. Those are not bad wins at all. We'll definitely take them if you're an Atlanta fan. Dejounte Murray is looking very good. Things are not looking nearly as bleak as some projected in the post-Trae Young era, or at least this season's part of the post-Trae Young era. He's not going to be out there the rest of this year, so obviously the Hawks don't have a ton to play for. Best case scenario for them is they make it through the play-in tournament somehow, get the 8th seed, and then just get absolutely demolished by the Boston Celtics, although they did just win 2 games against the Celtics, so maybe they could have some sort of weird hope in that series. That would be one of the biggest upsets in modern day NBA history, though, by a huge margin. And they're going to need a big upset in this one going up against the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets come to this game fresh off of a 2-point loss to the LA Clippers. Right now, health is the most important thing for the Nuggets, although they are trying to fight for that top seed in the Western Conference. They're only a half game back of the Timberwolves right now. The Nuggets really need Jamal Murray to come back from his knee issue if they're going to be trying to win games here at the very, very end of the season. I don't think they care about that too much. They just want to make sure he's at 100%, although he was out there getting shots up in the pregame before their game against the Clippers, so it seems like he's very, very close to coming back, so there's some chance he actually plays in this game. And if he does, we would see Reggie Jackson go back to the bench where he belongs, and the Nuggets ascend back to absolutely dominant championship caliber status like they've been at all season long when they're healthy. We do see Aaron Gordon and Jokic both on the injury report here. Aaron Gordon did take kind of an awkward fall or step. I don't know. It was kind of weird to watch in the loss to the Clippers. Him ending up with a foot strain makes sense to me, but I do think there's a decent chance he plays in this game. He finished that game up and he didn't look too bad. He wasn't limping severely or anything like that, so he's a pretty tough guy. I think there's a decent chance we see him play in this game. And Jokic is listed as probable with his ongoing hip complaint. He's definitely banged up, but he's playing great. He looks like an absolute monster out there. The way he's getting up and down the floor, the kind of shape he's in, this guy is an absolute unit. He deserves that MVP that he's about to win. He deserves it very, very much. Looking at the trends in this game, we see that Atlanta is 13-24 against the spread on the road. One of the worst teams in the league playing away from home. We see that Denver is only 19-1 against the spread at home, and they're minus 12.5 in this game. I think we like the Nuggets a little bit, minus 12.5. That's a lot of points. But, guys, we only like this if we know that Jamal Murray is going to play. If Jamal Murray doesn't play, we immediately switch to being on the Hawks plus 12.5. I think they'd find a way to keep this game relatively close against a Nuggets team that's got to be a little bit tired and is definitely a little bit banged up. Looking at the over-under in this game, it might be one of our bigger leans of the NBA slate, depending on all those health concerns that we've mentioned in all of our other picks. It's currently at 221.5. We see that the Hawks are 20-17 to the under when playing on the road, and that Denver is 22-17 to the under when playing at home. So give me the under in this one for sure. Especially if Jamal Murray is out, we definitely like the under in this game. And if Jamal Murray is in, we like the Nuggets. But if Jamal Murray is out, we definitely like the Hawks plus 12. That's all the games we have for today, guys. Hit that like button for good luck on all your bets and subscribe if you're new. Let me know in the comments any questions you have on today's slate. Thanks for watching. You can click the link in the description and go over to SumTheSpread.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for more sports betting action.